if I'm being honest, which we are, that's what we do. We're honest.
I'm sorry.
Hugh Grant is, and remains my favorite movie star of all time. I'm sorry. He just is.
Dang.
And here's why. I first discovered Hugh in that post 4 weddings and a funeral phase where a lot of American audiences discovered him. I was fucking charmed. I was so charmed by this guy, by his floppy hair British shtick, his like cool Britannia era, just sort of wit and whimsy. But it has been Hugh's versatility over the years that has really won me over. His incessant desire to play against type, to constantly sort of interrogate his own sort of persona, and specifically, his desire to lean into villains and weirdos and creeps in this latter half of his career, that really, really has taken him to the top for me in terms of my personal feelings. I think of him a lot like a reverse James Cagney, another of my favorite movie stars. Cagney, at heart, a song and dance man, a guy who wanted to do Busby Berkeley musicals and Yankee Doodle Dandy, but became typecast as a gangster because he was so good at being a gangster, White Heat, and et cetera, et cetera. Similarly, I think Hugh Grant was someone who at heart is born to play the villains and the weirdos and the creeps. It's what turns that little freak on and keeps him doing movies. But following the success of 4 Weddings, he became typecast as this sort of lovable romantic lead, and then had to find his way back to his sweet spot. And we're going to sort of trace his career and sort of follow the ups and downs of this thing. And watching him navigate these 2 poles over the last 20 plus years, doing a rom-com for the people, a weird movie for Hugh, a rom-com for the people, a weird movie for Hugh, has just made for what is people I think are now coming around to it in this sort of recent Hugh phase, but I think it's one of the most exhilarating careers in movies over the past 30, 40, 50 years. It hits so many of my buttons, it's almost embarrassing. And many years ago at this point, I wrote my list of the top 10 Hugh Grant performances. In honor of Heretic, I want to update that list. And I found this new list is very different. There's a lot of changes here. The biggest change is that first list included TV performances. This is movies, baby. We don't watch TV anymore. Sorry, we have too many movies to watch.
Very British Scandal demoted.
If this was TV and movies, it would still be Jeremy Thorpe in a very English Scandal.
You got it, bro.
Number 1 with a bullet.
Best.
One of the best period screen performances
So
I've
funny.
ever seen. He's so fucking good. If you have not seen A Very English Scandal, that first season with Ben Whishaw, oh my God, one of the best, most underrated TV seasons.
But we
of all
don't
time.
talk about that.
We don't talk about TV. Sorry, we don't talk about TV. I also want to make sure that I'm representing the breadth of Hugh's career because that's kind of the point of why I like him so much. So I'm going to go like phase by phase, era by era. Everything gets a little slot, not too many redundancies. I really want to appreciate the variety of his career. Starting with what is probably the artistic low point of Hugh's career, but I think still has some great performances. This aforementioned post 4 Weddings era, when Hollywood gets a little peek at Hugh and they say, "Give me that," and then they're trying to sort of recreate the 4 Weddings magic, put him in a bunch of rom-coms. This is also, of course, the era of like the Divine Brown arrest, the Tonight Show apology, the Elizabeth Hurley breakup. This is like Hugh's tabloid A-list crazy era. It lasts roughly from 95 to 2002, and it's characterized by movies like 9 Weeks with Julianne Moore, 2 Weeks Notice with Sandra Bullock, and my number 10 performance, Mickey Blue Eyes from 1999, baby. I think this is the best of the second tier Hugh rom-coms, not at the level of Notting Hill, 4 Weddings, Bridget Jones. But it's the most like screwball-y. I like it. It's so goofy and silly. It basically takes like floppy hair era Hugh and it marries him into the slapstick mafia. So it's like mob thing, but it's like slapstick, and he just gets to be like Hugh but have fun, and it's great. It's a really funny, silly movie, and it's also notable as all those like pre-Sopranos movies where you like watch a movie before 2000 and it has like 8 people from The Sopranos in it. Okay. I think this has the most. I would argue that Mickey Blue Eyes has the most like Sopranos of the Sopranos troupe before The Sopranos in it. We've got Tony Sirico, Polly Walnuts. Yeah. We've got Vincent Pastore, Big Pussy. We've got John Ventimiglia, Artie Bucco. Damn. And there's like, those are the first 3 that come to mind. There's at least like a couple others in this movie. Sopranos, actors all over the place. So Sopranos.
And Hugh uses them. Dude. Like a fucking Zen master.
He does, baby. He
like
does.
Tai Chi master.
Dude, Hugh in slapstick Sopranos. Mickey Blue Eyes is great. It's an underrated movie. It's very fun. James Caan's in it. At number 9, we got to recognize horror Hugh. I, at number 9, have Ken Russell's Lair of the White Worm from 1988. It's a very early Hugh performance. He plays Lord James Dampton. He's just, Lair of the White Worm is sort of like Ken Russell doing a Hammer horror.
Yep.
It's very British folk horror, and he's doing like English country aristocrat who confronts an ancient horror and has to fight it, and he's just effortless at it. It's not like a mind-blowing performance.
Justice for Heretic.
It's like Hugh in. Well, we haven't finished the list
Oh,
yet.
well, that's true.
It's Hugh sort of almost in autopilot, but Hugh at autopilot is just so
Pretty
fucking
good.
lovable and good. And the movie around him is just so good. He's almost the best part of the performance is he just sort of exists in the movie. Like he looks around him and says, "This movie's great. I'm just going to sort of do low key Hugh, and it's all going to be great."
Admirable.
So I love that. He knows what movie he's in, and he knows how to adjust his performances accordingly. Now let's get our first Richard Curtis on the list here, baby. His most frequent collaborator, the guy that put him on the map with 4 Weddings. You can't go wrong with any of the Richard Curtis movies. And at number 8, I've got the Christmas classic, Love Actually, baby.
Nice. I love that.
I
8,
love.
that's kind of low. I mean, Hugh was a lot of good
You're
stuff.
gonna forget.
I'm gonna
How
be like,
many,
oh,
you're
right,
gonna forget how many good
okay,
Hughes there are, and there
okay.
might be 1 or 2 on here that you haven't seen yet that
Okay.
you need to see.
Okay.
I've got or need to rewatch. You've probably seen all these, but need to rewatch.
I don't know.
He plays the Prime Minister in Love Actually, and I would argue
Of
that
course he does.
even more than Bill Nye, even more than Emma Thompson, even more than that freaking Walking Dead guy who has the creepy signs outside of Keira Knightley's apartment.
Yes.
I think Hugh Grant is the tone setter of Love Actually. I
Whoa.
think he is the heart of the movie. I think he is
Rickman's 6 feet under, and you're gonna do this?
even Rickman. Look, everybody's great. I think Hugh sets the tone for everybody else and is the sort of the centerpiece of the movie. He's the compass of the movie. He's like sweet and horny and goofy, and that's the movie. And he like nails that
and
vibe.
without him, what are we doing here?
He's at the center of all the Venn diagrams in Love Actually. He's the heart of it. And he's keeping alive the dream of 90s cool Britannia that he started 10 years prior for just like one last shining moment in 2000 and post 9/11, which is referenced in the opening lines of the movie. I know you remember that?
Yeah.
The first lines are about like
It's a
when
9/11
the towers
movie.
fell on 9/11. You're like, what the fuck?
Love Actually is a
But that works.
9/11 movie. Oh,
Yeah.
one of the
Love
best.
Actually
The
is all
best.
around us.
The greatest, guys.
Look, if you don't love Love Actually,
Come on now.
I would be curious to hear why, and then I will never speak to you again.
Margot-
But I would like to hear your last
I don't know
words.
if Margot's got the mic on, but Margot, do you like Love Actually?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Tepid yes.
I feel like I went too hard on...
No.
I won't disown you if you don't like Love Actually.
No,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can still talk to me, though.
All right.
Margo.
Sorry, Margot. That's
Best of all, though, in Love Actually, for Hugh, he outacts his nemesis, Colin Firth. So you know Love Actually must be one of his favorite movies, if for that reason alone. Next up, we've got his weird phase. I'm talking 2012 to the present day. And this starts with Cloud Atlas. The wonderfully weird Cloud Atlas goes through Paddington 2, The Gentleman, Operation Fortune, Dungeons and Dragons, Wonka Unfrosted. I love a lot of these performances. Cloud Atlas is just so fucking big and crazy. You get Hugh as like this cannibal king. But the thing about his performance in Cloud Atlas is I think the screenshots of him as the Cannibal King are ultimately a little more interesting than the performance itself. And that's nothing against him. He just if you watch the movie, he doesn't get a lot to do, or he doesn't get as much to do as you would think from those screenshots where he just looks wild and crazy. I know a lot of people love Paddington 2. I'm not obsessed with it in the way that some people are, but I do love Hugh in it. He's giving this sort of villainous aging actor past his prime, raging against the dying of the light. He's a real con man. He's real great. There's like a Dickensian aspect to the performance. Great stuff, just not my personal favorite of the group. That honor goes to his role as the sleazy private detective Fletcher in Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman, baby. In The Gentleman, he only exists in the frame narrative timeline of the movie. He's kind of the narrator of the movie, but he's such a perfect narrator, and he's mastered this just sort of like, I don't know my London dialects that well, but it feels sort of Cockney, it feels sort of East End, and he's just this sleazy little PI, and he's so fucking good, and he leans into it, and when a performance has teeth, when a performance has some edge, Hugh loves that, baby. Hugh loves that. So I got The Gentleman at number 7. At number 6, Joe, the second and final horror movie on this list, I'm talking Heretic.
Wow, 6.
I love him in
There
Heretic.
you go.
I love him.
Damn.
And we already talked about it, so let's move on to number 5. There is this interesting subgenre to Hugh's career from 2002 to 2007 where he does all these movies that have something to do with like pop music. He does music and lyrics with Drew Barrymore, where he's like an old pop star, right?
Mm-hmm.
He does American Dreams, which is the like American Idol parody. Remember that movie? And I think most famously at my number 5 spot, he plays the nepo baby of a famous pop star in About a Boy, baby. I love About a Boy. I do think it doesn't give the best performance in the movie. I think Toni Collette probably would get that. But I love what he's doing in About a Boy because he's finding something in between. He's finding a rom-com persona that is in between the like super lovable Notting Hill character and the super sleazy Bridget Jones character. Here you get something more, maybe one of his most realistic, relatable performances. Just a sort of selfish guy living off his dad's money who is capable of like changing and caring about people, and watching just a very sort of his like a leisurely moral arc in About a Boy is and he's the perfect person I think to do that performance. I like About a Boy quite a bit. This is a movie that did not show up on my last top 10.
It didn't.
And now it's at 5.
Controversially so.
Now it's at 5.
I'm glad to hear it.
I listened to the people and I rewatched and I said you're right.
I appreciate that.
At number 4, let's get into the period movies, baby. Let's get into the period pieces. I've got 2 of them on this list, starting with, at number 4, Sense and Sensibility, Ang Lee's excellent adaptation of the Jane Austen novel. He plays Edward C. Ferrars. He is like so soft and sweet in this movie. It is just like wild to watch this in comparison to his like darker roles. He's perfect. He's heartbreaking. He and Emma Thompson are just duking it out to see who can do Longing better. I think Emma wins by a nose, but tough competition. Hugh still nails it and comes in at 4. At number 3, the best of the Richard Curtis performances. Is it going to be Notting Hill? Is it going to be 4 Weddings? Is it going to be Notting Hill? Is it going to be 4 Weddings? Of course it's fucking 4 Weddings, baby. Are you kidding me? The performance that made his career and almost ended it by typecasting him. He is so fucking good in 4 Weddings. Oh my God. I've seen it 100 times. I hope to see it 100 more times before my inevitable funeral. I fucking love him in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Notting Hill not making it on this list. That might be my most controversial omission. I think the reason is it's a performance that feels a little redundant with his 4 Weddings performance. I didn't think the list could fit both of them. And in Notting Hill, you could argue for About a Boy, but in Notting Hill, I think it's definitely a case of he's giving the like 3rd or 4th best performance in the movie. He's very solid, but there's a lot of great British character actors who he's got to be sort of just, he's got to really hold down the fort as the leading man, and then all these other actors around him get to have a lot of fun. So I think that does steal a little shine, where 4 Weddings, even though he is the rom-com lead, he's a weird rom-com lead in 4 Weddings. I think less conventional of a lead than in Notting Hill. And he gets to do a little character acting in 4 Weddings, where he doesn't get to do as much of that in Notting Hill. So that gets my number 3 spot. And number 2, the last period piece on the list, Joe, and this is with all due respect to great performances in Morris, the Merchant Ivory movie Morris. Restoration, a weird movie with Robert Downey Jr. about everyone's favorite historical period, the Restoration, like 17th century. Dude, it's a Miramax movie. It fucking is insane. I love it. Hugh is like this character out of like the Draftsman's Contract, that Peter Greenaway movie, but like dumber and sillier. It's amazing. Florence Foster Jenkins, An Awfully Big Adventure, Impromptu, where he plays Frederick Chopin, another movie I really like. Those are all great, but it's got to be one of my favorite movies of all time, and he is a very underrated part of this movie. Another Merchant Ivory movie, The Remains of the Day from 1993. I love this movie, one of my all-time favorites, and he plays a small but vital role as this sort of like, at first, this sort of like weak, virginal, aristocratic scion that Anthony Hopkins has to like give the birds and the bees talk to, and neither one knows what to do, and it's really funny and awkward in the garden. But then he's the one who sort of first sort of latches on to what's actually going on in this big aristocratic mansion out in the English countryside, which is that a certain faction of British aristocrats are essentially selling their soul to the Nazis in this aristocratic house. And he's the one that finds out about it and is trying to do something about it, and is now trying to get Anthony Hopkins to sort of grow a conscience and do something about it.
I gotta rewatch.
You gotta rewatch.
I don't remember Anthony Hopkins in it at all.
You mean Hugh Grant?
No, I don't remember Anthony Hopkins in it.
In Remains of the Day?
I don't remember. I don't remember the movie. I'm
oh, you don't remember?
Blanks.
Anthony Hopkins is the star of the movie.
I really don't remember this. I don't know if I've ever seen this movie.
Joe.
Feel like I don't think I have.
No. Your reaction right now is telling me you've never seen this movie.
Okay, yeah.
Put best. I think. I mean, it's close.
It's your number 2 favorite Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant, and probably the best motion ever movie of all time. Watch Remains of the Day.
Okay.
ASAP.
Okay.
ASAP.
Maybe I'll watch tonight. It's Thursday night. Who
Watch
knows?
it tonight,
Okay.
baby. So fucking good.
Okay.
It's got so many themes that you will
Nice.
salivate
Love,
over.
love.
Salivate over.
Good.
okay?
I don't know this.
And last but not least, I think it's kind of a forgotten movie. Like, I don't hear about it mentioned a lot. I think it's a like masterpiece with a capital M.
Love that.
Last but not least, my number 1 Hugh Grant performance of all time. What is it going to be? What have I not mentioned?
Paddington?
I've alluded to it. No, while you were gone, I
sorry.
talked about Paddington. Paddington did not make it.
Okay. Bridget Jones?
Yes, baby. Daniel Cleaver and Bridget Jones. This is like he dropped a bomb on the rom-com with Daniel Cleaver and Bridget Jones' Diary. This is the equivalent of when Henry Fonda played the bad guy in Once Upon a Time in the West. This is Hugh turning an entire genre on its head by being so goddamn perfect as scumbag boss Daniel Cleaver, and he unlocked an entirely new chapter to his career. That moment early in the movie where they play Aretha Franklin's Respect and the elevator doors open and Daniel Cleaver just does the slightest little smug grin and struts out in slow motion like he's the fucking king of the world and he's so fucking sexy and sleazy. And you're like, what is happening? If you're watching this chronologically in 2001, you're like, what? This is like, I'm looking at Hugh Grant, but like I'm looking at the Hugh Grant of Four Weddings. I'm looking at the Hugh Grant of the Richard Curtis universe, but something's different. Like, what's happening? What's different is this guy's here to fucking ruin your day, baby. This is not a nice guy. This is a fucking scumbag. And Hugh fucking crushes.
Yeah.
I think Bridget Jones' Diary is a massively underrated movie, massively like important movie in the history of the rom-com. So good. We're getting a new one. I don't know if you saw. We're getting a new one. Mad About the Girl.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. I fucking love this franchise. And Hugh Grant as Daniel Cleaver is my number 1.
I love that, bro.
My number 1 Hugh Grant performance of all time.
I would be mad if it wasn't.
Yeah, movie performance.
Right, because
with all due respect,
we all know about
a very British
scandal.
Great
list.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for updating it because I couldn't sleep at night with your old list. This is much better.
It is a better list. It is a better list.
Yeah, it has About a Boy on it for goodness sake. How do you have Hugh Grant and not have About a Boy? But now you do, so there's no problem.
Because I am the world's biggest Hugh Grant stan, so I know all the little nooks and crannies. I know all the little corners, baby.
I'm so excited. Like, Heretic made both our lists. In like a month, will it be on either of our lists?
Hard to say.
Yours?
Hard to say.
Yes. Maybe. Mine? Maybe.
I just really liked how it's what Hugh does best, where he like weaponizes his own shtick. So he's like, I love how in Heretic he's giving you old school mumbly, sort of bashful British Hugh Grant, but it's a strategy to like fuck you and lock you in the basement. I like that a lot.
Yeah.